The billionaire's ghostly encounter, a hospital secret, a past revealed. Hook. Mr. Thorne, I need you to sign these documents to start the new hospital wing project, the secretary said, as Matthew Thorne gazed at the view from his 20th floor office. Leave them on my desk. I'll review them in a moment, he replied distractedly, adjusting his tie before grabbing his briefcase. The clock read 9:30 a.m. He had an important meeting at St. Luke's Hospital. During the drive in his black Mercedes, Matthew mentally reviewed the project numbers. $15 million invested in the most ambitious renovation of London's most prestigious private medical center. This project could catapult his construction firm to another level. Upon arriving at the hospital, Sarah, his assistant, was waiting for him at the entrance. The investors are in the boardroom on the 3rd floor, she informed him as they walked. But Dr. Wilson asked that you first see the spaces where the new wing will be built. Can't we leave it for later? Matthew asked impatiently. She insisted it was important for you to visualize the complete project before the presentation. Matthew sighed, resigned. All right, let's go. They walked through several corridors until they reached the maternity wing. The smell of disinfectant churned his stomach, bringing back memories he preferred to keep buried. It was then that he saw her. Elena stood next to a bassinet, holding a baby. Her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, her nurse's uniform, her gentle smile as she looked at the newborn. The image hit him like a punch to the gut. He froze. Elena looked up, and their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. "Matthew," she whispered, instinctively clutching the baby to her chest. "What? What are you doing here?" he managed to articulate, his voice barely a murmur. "I work here, in the neonatal intensive care unit." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah, noticing the tension, cleared her throat. "Mr. Thorne, the investors—" "Give me a moment," Matthew cut in, not taking his eyes off Elena and the baby. Is he yours?" The question hung in the air, heavy, uncomfortable. Elena shook her head. "No, Matthew, he's an abandoned baby. They found him this morning at the hospital entrance." Matthew felt the air return to his lungs, but the knot in his throat persisted. 2 years of distance evaporated in an instant. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah insisted, "we really need to—" "I'm coming," he replied curtly. He looked at Elena one last time, who had returned her attention to the baby. "We need to talk," he said, before turning away. "There's nothing to talk about, Matthew," she replied without looking at him. "We said everything we had to say 2 years ago." Matthew clenched his fists and followed Sarah towards the boardroom, leaving Elena and the baby behind, but carrying with him the weight of unanswered questions and dreams that could never be. What deep-seated emotions do you think this encounter stirred in Matthew? Share your thoughts in the comments. Confronting ghosts of the past, the meeting with the investors became a blur in Matthew's mind. His thoughts lingered in the maternity ward. "The presentation was excellent," Sarah commented as they left the boardroom. "Are you feeling all right?" "I need a moment," Matthew replied, loosening his tie. "Where's the restroom?" In the restroom, he splashed cold water on his face. The mirror reflected a disturbed man, very different from the confident businessman he usually was. He dried his face and went out, determined to find Elena. He found her in the nurse's break room, alone, filling out some forms. "Can we talk?" he asked from the doorway. Elena looked up. "I'm working, Matthew." "5 minutes, Elena, please." She put the pen down on the table. "What do you want to talk about? About how you disappeared after the divorce, or how you blocked my calls when I tried to contact you about pending paperwork?" "I know, I acted like a coward," Matthew admitted, sitting across from her. "But seeing you today, with that baby—" "Don't do this," Elena interrupted him. "Don't use the baby as an excuse. His name is Leo, by the way, and I'm just doing my job." Since when do you work here? For a year now. After I sold the apartment you left me, I decided to change hospitals. I needed a new beginning. Silence settled between them, heavy with memories. Do you remember the last time we were in a hospital together? Matthew asked. Don't do this, Elena repeated, her voice breaking slightly. It was when we lost the baby, he continued, after our third fertilization attempt. And after that, you became obsessed with work, Elena added, as if building buildings could fill the void left by our unborn child. Elena, No, Matthew. I don't want your pity or your belated explanations. 2 years have passed. I've rebuilt my life. I'm fine this way. The door opened, and a young nurse entered. Elena, Leo is crying. He doesn't want to take his bottle. Elena immediately stood up. I have to go. Can we meet later? Matthew insisted. There's a new project here at the hospital. We'll coincide. This is a workplace, Matthew. Let's keep it professional. Elena paused at the door. And please, don't mention the past again. It doesn't hurt as much if we don't stir it up. Matthew watched her walk away down the corridor, her white uniform disappearing among the hospital staff. He remained seated, thinking about how two people who once shared everything could now barely hold a civil conversation. His phone vibrated. It was Sarah. The modified blueprints are ready for review. Matthew put the phone away without responding. The blueprints could wait. He needed to think. He needed to understand why seeing Elena with that baby had awakened feelings he believed were buried under meters of concrete and years of obsessive work. The abandoned child and a lingering regret. The baby was found in a cardboard box wrapped in an old blanket, explained Dr. Michelle Wilson to Matthew in her office. Sad, isn't it? Luckily, Elena was on duty that morning. Matthew had sought out the administrator under the pretext of discussing project details, but the conversation, inevitably, drifted to the abandoned baby. And what's going to happen to him? He asked, feigning disinterest. For now, he's in temporary hospital custody. Elena is personally taking care of him, while social services processes the case. Elena always had a special gift with children, Matthew murmured. I know. I've seen her grow professionally this past year. She's one of our best nurses. Matthew shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Did she tell you about you two? Yes, she mentioned something. But don't worry. Here, personal stories take a back seat. What's important is the work. A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Elena. Dr. Wilson, I need your signature for... She stopped when she saw Matthew. Excuse me, I'll come back later. Come in, Elena, Michelle ordered. Mr. Thorne was just leaving. How is Leo? Better. He's taking his bottle normally now, and his vital signs are stable. Matthew stood up, but before leaving he asked, Why Leo? Elena looked at him directly for the first time that day. Because it means the one who brings light, and that's what he has brought to the NICU, light. Technically, Michelle interjected, we shouldn't name them abandoned babies. They all deserve a name, Elena interrupted firmly. I'm not going to refer to him as Baby Doe number 47, or the abandoned one from door 3. Matthew remembered discussions about baby names years ago when they were planning their family. Elena had always been passionate about that topic. I need the project documents on my desk early tomorrow, Matthew said, abruptly changing the subject. Excuse me. He left the office feeling Elena's gaze on his back. In the hallway, he stopped in front of the NICU window. Leo slept peacefully in his bassinet, oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. A nurse approached the bassinet to check the monitors. Are you family? She asked when she saw Matthew. No, he replied, walking away, just passing by. As he walked towards the exit, his mind returned again and again to that cardboard box and old blanket. What kind of desperation led someone to abandon their own child? Perhaps, he thought, there were different kinds of abandonment, some more obvious than others. A past revealed, a new perspective. I've already reviewed the blueprints for the new wing, Matthew said, sitting in his office that night. But there's something I don't understand. What is it? Sarah asked, preparing to take notes. Why didn't anyone tell me Elena worked there? Sarah closed her notebook. I didn't think it was relevant to the project, sir. You didn't think it was relevant that my ex-wife works in the hospital where we're going to build? With all due respect, Mr. Thorne, you never talk about your personal life, and the information we had was about administrative staff, not nurses. Matthew rubbed his temples. The day's images kept replaying in his head. Do you want us to look for another hospital for the project? Sarah suggested. No, he replied flatly. This project is too important. His cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Michelle. We need to discuss some details about the NICU area. Can we meet tomorrow? Schedule a meeting with Dr. Wilson for tomorrow, he ordered Sarah. What time? Any time, except during the nurse's shift change. Sarah looked at him with understanding. The shift change is at 3. Then at 11, Matthew said, standing up. I'm going home. In the parking lot, his phone rang again. This time, it was his mother. How was the hospital meeting? She asked. Fine, he replied curtly. Did you see her? Matthew stopped before getting into the car. How do you know? Son, London is small, and I'm still in contact with some people at the hospital. Mom, I don't want to talk about this. You never want to talk about anything, Matthew, just like your father. You know, sometimes silence does more harm than words. I have to drive, Mom. Talk later. On the way home, he passed the building where he used to live with Elena. The lights in the 7th floor apartment were on. New tenants, new life. He remembered the last night they spent there 2 years ago. The packed boxes, the heavy silence, the unspoken words. We can't go on like this, Elena had said that night. Like what? Living like strangers, sleeping in separate rooms, avoiding each other. I'm busy with work, Elena. The construction firm, the projects, the meetings. There's always something more important than us. Matthew shook his head, returning to the present. The traffic light was green. Behind him, someone honked. He sped up, leaving the building and the memories behind. But the knot in his stomach persisted, just as it had 2 years ago. An unexpected truth unfolds. The model of the new project occupied the center of the boardroom. Matthew pointed to the different spaces as he explained. The new wing will have 5 floors. The first will be exclusively for newborns and pediatric intensive care. Why start with newborns? One of the investors asked. Because it's where it's most needed, Michelle replied before Matthew. Our current unit is overwhelmed. Elena entered at that moment with some documents. She stood by the door waiting. The design includes 25 new incubators, Matthew continued, avoiding looking at her, and a special area for abandoned babies. The investors exchanged glances. Abandoned babies? One questioned. Wouldn't it be better to focus on patients who can pay? Elena stepped forward. Excuse me, but Elena, Michelle warned. No, doctor, they need to understand something. Elena approached the table. Those babies didn't choose their situation, and as a hospital, we have a social responsibility. Madam, one of the investors began. Nurse Smith, she corrected him, and I've seen babies die because we didn't have enough space or equipment. Does that sound like a good business model to you? Elena, please, Matthew intervened. This is a private meeting. Sure, private. Like all your important meetings, right? Silence filled the room. Michelle cleared her throat. Perhaps we should take a break, she suggested. The investors left, leaving Matthew and Elena alone with Michelle. I'm sorry, Elena murmured. I got carried away. Your arguments are valid, Matthew said, surprising her. In fact, I had already considered that in the budget. What? The abandoned baby wing will be funded by a special fund. It won't depend on the investors. Elena looked at him, confused. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, he replied, gathering his documents. And because someone taught me that everyone deserves a chance. He left the room, leaving Elena speechless. Michelle smiled slightly. People change, Elena, the doctor said. Sometimes they just need time. Or an abandoned baby, Elena murmured, looking at the blueprints on the table. The hospital cafe was almost empty. Matthew stirred his coffee without drinking it, while Elena sat across from him, her hands wrapped around her cup. Thanks for agreeing to talk to me, he said. I'm not doing it for you, Elena replied. I'm doing it for the project. I need to know if you're really going to follow through on what you said about the abandoned baby area. I have everything in writing. I can show you the documents. Why, Matthew? Why now? Do I need a reason to do something good? You always have a reason. There's always a hidden motive. Matthew put the spoon down on the table. Seeing Leo made me think. Don't bring Leo into this. It's the truth, Elena. Seeing how you care for him. How I would have cared for our son. The silence grew dense between them. When I suggested adopting, Elena continued, you said it wasn't the same, that you wanted your own blood, your own surname. I was an idiot. Were you? I'm still an idiot, but at least now I know. Elena took a sip of coffee. You know what's the worst part? That we didn't even fight. You just drifted away. Dinners alone turned into dinners with clients. Nights together turned into nights at the office. Work was an excuse, Matthew admitted. I was scared. Of what? Of not being enough. Of failing you, like I failed you with. Don't say it. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter anymore, Elena said, standing up. I have to go back. Leo needs his medicine. Elena, if you really want to do something good, keep your word with the project. Those babies need a dignified place. I will, I promise you. Don't promise me anything. Promise it to them. Elena left, leaving Matthew alone with his cold coffee and his thoughts. Through the cafe window, he could see the structure where the new wing would be built. Meters of concrete and glass that, he hoped, could begin to repair some of what he had broken. A mother's confession. A son's revelation. Your mother is here, Sarah announced over the intercom. Matthew barely had time to look up when Mrs. Eleanor Thorne already entered his office, elegant as always in her tailored suit. To what do I owe the visit? Matthew asked. Does a mother need reasons to see her son? You always have reasons, Mom. Eleanor sat across from the desk. Michelle told me about the hospital project. Since when do you talk to Michelle? Since always. She was the one who attended me when what? Eleanor sighed deeply. When we adopted you, son. Matthew felt as if the air had left the room. What? I was 25 years old. I couldn't have children. Your father and I tried everything, just like you and Elena. No, it can't be. Michelle was a young resident then. She helped us with the process. Matthew stood up abruptly. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to know. Because I saw how you looked at Elena with contempt when she suggested adopting. That was different. Why? Because I'm not your real mother. No, you are my mother. Exactly. Eleanor smiled. Just like you could have been the real father to any child you adopted. Matthew sank into his chair. Dad knows. Your father was the one who insisted on the adoption. He said that love builds families, not blood. Why did you never tell me? At first, because you were very young. Later, I suppose the moment never seemed right. Matthew remembered all the times he had boasted about the Thorne lineage, about the family blood, about the importance of the surname. Elena, he murmured. Elena understood this better than you, Eleanor said. She sees every day how love has nothing to do with biology. I have to go, Matthew said, standing up. I need to think. Son, Eleanor called him before he left. Don't make the mistake of confusing blood with love. Your father and I loved you from the first moment we saw you, just as you could have loved. Please, Mom, I need to be alone. He left the office and drove aimlessly through the city. He ended up, without really being surprised, in the hospital parking lot. From there, he could see the NICU window, where he knew Elena would be caring for Leo. His phone rang. It was a message from Michelle. Your mother told me, when you want to talk, you know where to find me. Matthew found Michelle in her office, reviewing files despite the late hour. How many others knew? He asked from the doorway. Only me and Dr. Green, who has passed away, Michelle replied without looking up. Sit down. Elena never. No, I never told her. It wasn't my place. Matthew sank into the chair. You were a precious baby, Michelle smiled. Eleanor couldn't stop crying when she put you in her arms, and the woman who gave birth to me. She was very young. She wanted you to have a better life, like Leo's mother. Every story is different, Matthew. But yes, love sometimes means letting go. Down the hallway, they heard Elena's voice singing softly. She was doing her night rounds. Did you know she's applying to adopt Leo? Michelle asked. Matthew looked at her in surprise. What? It's still in process. The social worker will come next week for the final assessment. But can she? I mean, she's single and… Times have changed, Matthew, and Elena has everything in her favor. Stable job, her own home, excellent references. Her own home? Yes, the apartment you left her. She completely renovated it. The guest room is now a nursery. Matthew remembered that room. They had painted it together years ago, dreaming of the baby that never came. She was always ready, he murmured. And you weren't, Michelle completed. But that doesn't make you a bad person, just someone who needed time to understand certain things. Like what? Like families come in all shapes and sizes. Like love doesn't need shared DNA. Like sometimes the best parents are the ones who choose to be parents, not the ones who are by accident. Elena passed in front of the office, gently rocking Leo. She didn't see them. She looks happy, Matthew said. She is, Michelle replied. She found her way. The question is, Jama, have you found yours? Matthew stood up. Thanks, Michelle. Why? For keeping the secret. For taking care of Elena. For everything. Go home, Matthew. It's been a long day. In the parking lot, Matthew looked one last time towards the illuminated window where Elena was caring for Leo. He wondered if his father had felt that way, 35 years ago, looking through another hospital window, waiting to take home a baby who didn't share his blood, but who would fill his life with love. What profound impact will this revelation have on Matthew's choices going forward? Will he finally embrace a new understanding of family and love? Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Old walls, new foundations. The Thornes always build for the future, his father's voice said in the corporate video. Matthew watched it from his computer in his darkened office. Sir, Sarah interrupted from the doorway. The contractors are waiting for your signature to begin demolition at the hospital. Has the area been evacuated? Yes. The NICU has been temporarily relocated to the 3rd floor. Matthew closed his laptop. Elena, did Nurse Smith agree to the relocation? In fact, she organized everything. She says as long as the babies are safe, the rest is just logistics. Typical of her, Matthew murmured. Pardon? Nothing, Bring the documents. As he signed, he remembered the conversation with his mother. The Thorns, the family legacy, all built on a truth hidden for decades. His phone vibrated. It was a message from Elena. "We need to talk about the modified blueprints. I'm going to the hospital," he announced, standing up. "But the board meeting. Reschedule everything. At the hospital." He found Elena in the temporary unit, checking the facilities. "The electrical connections aren't enough," she said, without greeting him. "I know. It's temporary." "A baby in an incubator doesn't understand temporary, Matthew. That's why I brought this." She held out a roll of blueprints. "Emergency modifications. We can reinforce the electrical system today." Elena reviewed the blueprints. "When?" "Last night. I couldn't sleep." "Why?" Matthew hesitated for a moment. "Did you know I'm adopted?" Elena looked up, surprised. "What?" "I found out yesterday. My mother, Michelle, was there. When?" "Matthew. All this time, Elena. All those times I talked about family lineage, about the importance of Thorn blood." "Stop," Elena said softly. "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Use this as a way to, I don't know, redeem yourself or something. It's not that." "Then what is it?" Matthew looked through the window, where several babies slept in their bassinets. "It's understanding, finally, that I was wrong, that you were right, that a family—" "Matthew, please. 2 years have passed. I've already made my decision with Leo." "I know, and I'm happy for you, for both of you." Elena looked at him intently, searching for any sign of a lie in his words. "I just want to do the right thing," he added. "For these babies, for the hospital, for everything I didn't do before." "Good," Elena replied after a moment. "Then let's start with those electrical connections. Demolitions start tomorrow," Matthew announced at the staff meeting. "The process will take 3 weeks." The doctors and nurses listened attentively as he pointed to the blueprints projected on the wall. "What if they find structural problems?" Elena asked from the back of the room. "We have contingency plans," Matthew replied. "We won't take risks with patients." Michelle observed the exchange with interest. The tension between them had changed. It had transformed into something more professional, more mature. After the meeting, Matthew stayed to collect his documents. "The social worker is coming today," Michelle commented, approaching. "I know." "How do you know?" "Elena's been more nervous than usual, and she's been staying late for 3 days organizing documents." "You know her well." "I used to," Matthew corrected. "Now it's different." "Different better or different worse?" "Just different." A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Sarah. "Mr. Thorne, they found something during the preliminary inspection." "What?" "You'd better come see." In the demolition area, a group of workers surrounded the uncovered wall. "It's part of the original structure," explained the foreman, "from when this was a convent more than 100 years ago." "Does it affect the construction plans?" Matthew asked. "We'd have to modify the entire design to preserve it." "How much would it delay the project?" 2 months, minimum." Matthew observed the ancient wall. The exposed bricks told a story of care and service that dated back generations. "Do it," he ordered. "Modify the blueprints. This wall stays." "But sir, the additional cost—" "Some things are worth preserving," Matthew interrupted. "This hospital has history. Let's respect it." From the hallway, Elena observed the scene. For a moment, her eyes met Matthew's. She nodded slightly before turning and returning to the NICU, where the social worker was waiting for her for the final interview, a crisis and a shared vigil. "Leo has a fever," Elena announced, leaning over the incubator. 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Night had fallen over the hospital, and the noise of construction machinery had finally ceased. "The antibiotics should be taking effect," Dr. Brown replied, checking the chart. Something's not right, Elena insisted. His breathing is very rapid. At that moment, the monitors began to beep. He's convulsing, Elena cried. Everything became a whirlwind of activity. Doctors running, shouted orders, the sharp sound of alarms. Matthew, who was checking the progress of the construction on the floor below, heard the code blue over the loudspeakers. NICU, code blue. Without thinking, he ran up the stairs. When he arrived, he saw Elena through the glass, performing compressions on Leo's tiny chest. "Come on, little one," he heard her murmur. "Don't give up." The minutes dragged on like hours. Finally, the cardiac monitor returned to a normal rhythm. Elena came out of the room exhausted and was surprised to see Matthew. "What are you doing here?" "I heard the code," he replied. "He's stable," Elena sighed. "For now." She sank into a chair, trembling slightly. Matthew took off his jacket and put it over her shoulders. "The social worker," Elena began. "She'll approve it," Matthew interrupted. "She'd be an idiot if she didn't. How can you be so sure?" "Because I saw you in there. Because anyone who sees you with him—" "Matthew, no. Let me finish. You're the best mother Leo could have. And I say that as someone who knows about extraordinary adoptive mothers." Elena looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "The flowers," she said suddenly. "What? The flowers at the NICU entrance? They're the same ones I used to have at home. Sunflowers." "Oh, that." Matthew scratched the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "The landscaper asked what flowers to put and—" "Thank you," Elena interrupted, "for remembering." "There are many things I remember, Elena." The silence that followed was different from previous ones. Less tense, more thoughtful. "I need to go back to Leo," Elena finally said, taking off his jacket. "Of course, and Elena, yes, he's going to be okay. Both of them will be." Elena nodded and returned to the unit. Matthew stayed a moment longer, looking through the glass as she gently arranged the blankets around the baby. The sunflowers at the entrance were reflected in the window, silent witnesses to a new type of understanding between two people who once shared everything. A new family, a lasting legacy. "The adoption was approved," Michelle announced, entering Matthew's temporary office at the hospital. "Elena already knows. They'll tell her officially this afternoon. But yes, Leo will legally be her son." Matthew put down the blueprints he was reviewing. "Good. They deserve it. You know, Elena asked that the waiting area in the new plans be modified. Why? She wants a space for parents to be close to their children without interfering with medical work. She says waiting is the hardest part." "I already modified it," Matthew replied. "I added an area with reclining chairs and a small kitchenette." "When?" "A week ago. It was obvious it was needed." Michelle smiled. "Have you changed, Matthew?" "No, I just see things differently." A knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Elena. "Am I interrupting?" she asked. "Not at all," Michelle replied, standing up. "In fact, I was just leaving." When they were alone, Elena approached the desk. "The social worker gave me the final papers," she said, showing him a folder. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Elena hesitated for a moment. "There's something I want to ask you." "What is it? Why the wall? The ancient wall?" "Yes, I know preserving it is delaying the whole project." Matthew stood up and walked to the window. From there, they could see the partially demolished structure with the centenary wall still standing. "When I was a child," he began, "my father brought me here. He showed me this hospital and told me, 'Son, we don't just build buildings. We build places where life happens.' I didn't understand what he meant until now. And what did he mean? That some things are worth more than money or time, that there are stories that deserve to be preserved." Elena also approached the window. "Leo is better now," she said. The fever hasn't returned. I know. I read the reports every day. Why? Why does it matter to me? Because even if we're not, even if things are different, what matters to you matters to me. Elena looked at him for a long time. The wall, she finally said, reminds me of us. How? Something ancient that survives despite changes. Different, but still standing. Elena. No, it's okay. It's better this way. Different, but not destroyed. She walked away from the window and headed towards the door. The adoption ceremony is on Friday, she said before leaving. If you want to come, I'll be there, Matthew replied. Elena nodded and left, leaving behind the echo of an invitation that, months ago, would have been unthinkable. The ceremony and a silent promise. The social services office smelled of old paper and stale coffee. Elena waited while the social worker, Ms. Johnson, reviewed the documents one last time. Everything seems to be in order, she finally said. We just need one last signature here. Elena took the pen with a trembling hand. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Are you sure about this? Ms. Johnson asked. Being a single mother isn't easy. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. There's one more thing, the social worker added. We received an additional letter of recommendation. From whom? From Mr. Matthew Thorne. He says you are the most capable person he knows to be a mother. Elena froze, the pen suspended over the paper. No, she didn't know. She didn't have to know. But it weighed heavily on the final decision. It's not common for a businessman of his level to take the time to write something like that. Elena signed the document, blinking back tears. Leo Smith, Ms. Johnson read. Beautiful name. It was my grandfather's name, Elena replied. A man who believed that family is much more than blood. Back at the hospital, she found Matthew supervising the construction. Why did you do it? She asked directly. Do what? The letter of recommendation. Matthew put down the blueprints he was reviewing. Because it was the right thing to do. Because you deserve to be happy. I didn't need your help. I know. I didn't do it to help you. I did it because it's the truth. They looked at each other in silence, the noise of the construction as a backdrop. Friday, Elena finally said. The ceremony is at 11. I know. I already asked for the day off. Elena nodded and turned away, but stopped before leaving. Matthew? Yes? Thank you. The word floated between them, heavy with meaning, before Elena disappeared down the hallway towards the NICU, where Leo awaited her. Matthew remained staring at the empty space where she had been, thinking of all the letters he never wrote, of all the truths he never spoke, and how sometimes love means letting go and supporting from afar. The night before the adoption ceremony, Matthew couldn't sleep. From his window, he saw the lights of London twinkle like fallen stars. His phone rang. It was Sarah. Sir, there's an emergency at the hospital. What happened? A water leak damaged part of the electrical system in the temporary NICU area. Matthew was already putting on his jacket. I'm on my way. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Elena evacuating the babies. The emergency generator is failing, she explained as she moved an incubator. Leo and 2 other babies need constant power. Where are you taking them? To the south wing, but it's full. There aren't enough connections. Matthew observed the situation. My temporary office, he suddenly said, has its own generator for the construction computers. Are you sure? Completely. Let's go. They worked together for the next few hours, moving equipment, connecting cables, making sure every baby was stable. At 3 in the morning, everything was finally under control. Elena sank into a chair next to Leo's incubator. In a few hours, he'll officially be my son, she murmured. He's already your son, Matthew replied. The paper just makes it legal. Do you remember when we used to stay up like this? Elena asked. Planning the future, talking about babies. Elena. No, it's okay. It's different now. Everything is different. Leo stirred in his incubator, making soft noises. He looks like you, Matthew said. What? When he sleeps, he makes the same gestures you do. Elena smiled. Babies learn from those who care for them, like I learned from my parents, Matthew added. From my adoptive parents. They fell silent, watching Leo sleep. The lights of the monitors blinked softly, like fireflies in the darkness. You should go rest, Matthew finally said. Tomorrow is an important day. Will you stay with him? Yes, go easy. Elena stood up and walked towards the door. Before leaving, she turned. Sometimes, she said softly, things don't turn out as we plan, but that doesn't mean they turn out wrong. Matthew nodded, and Elena disappeared into the hospital night, leaving him alone with Leo, and with the thought that sometimes love has strange ways of manifesting itself, like nocturnal butterflies seeking the light. The inauguration and a new chapter. The day dawned clear and bright. The courthouse ceremony room was full of people, hospital staff, Elena's family, some close friends. Nervous? Michelle asked, sitting next to Matthew in the last row. Why would I be nervous? It's not my ceremony. No, but it's an end and a beginning. Elena entered with Leo in her arms. The baby wore a small white suit that made him look like a tiny angel. The social worker accompanied her with the final documents. Please rise, the judge announced. As he listened to the formal proceedings, Matthew remembered another ceremony, years ago, when his parents finally told him about his adoption. He was 12 years old, and his biggest concern had been whether he could still call them Mom and Dad. Of course, his father had said, love needs no explanations. The judge's voice brought him back to the present. Elena Smith, do you accept all the legal and moral responsibilities that come with being Leo's mother? Yes, I accept, Elena replied firmly. By the power vested in me by law, I declare this adoption official. Leo is now, legally and permanently, your son. Applause filled the room. Elena hugged Leo, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. Matthew silently got up and walked towards the exit. In the hallway, he met his mother. Are you leaving so soon? Eleanor asked. My part here is done. Your part? What do you think your part was, son? Matthew looked towards the room where Elena was receiving hugs and congratulations. To learn, he finally replied. To learn that sometimes love means letting go, as you and Dad taught me. Eleanor took his hand. And as Leo's birth mother taught Elena, the circle continues, son. Matthew nodded and walked towards the elevators, carrying with him the image of Elena and Leo, a new family formed not by blood, but by choices, by love. The inauguration of the new pavilion will be in 2 weeks, Matthew announced at the final meeting. I want everything perfect. The contractors nodded, reviewing the latest modifications. The ancient wall had been perfectly integrated into the modern design, creating a contrast that told the hospital's story. Elena Nurse Smith asked for a tour beforehand, Sarah informed him. Why? She wants to make sure everything works for the babies. You know how she is with details. Matthew smiled slightly. Schedule it for tomorrow. In the temporary unit, Elena prepared Leo to go home. The baby had grown strong and healthy in recent weeks. Ready for tomorrow's tour? Michelle asked, entering the unit. I need to make sure everything is okay, Elena replied. The connections, the ventilation, the spaces, the design is excellent. Matthew made sure of that. Elena picked up Leo, who gurgled happily. I know. It's different now. Different how? More professional, as if we had finally found our place with each other. Michelle watched as Elena prepared Leo's bag with the efficiency of an experienced mother. You know, sometimes the best relationships are the ones that evolve, the doctor commented. The ones that transform into something new, like the hospital. Exactly, like that ancient wall that is now part of something modern. Elena looked out the window towards the almost finished construction. Tomorrow will be the first time we see the entire pavilion, she said. Nervous? No, just curious to see how everything has changed, how we have all changed. Leo yawned in her arms, oblivious to the adults' conversations. Go home, Michelle suggested. Tomorrow will be a long day. Elena nodded and left with Leo, leaving behind the echo of steps that would soon walk new corridors, built on ancient foundations, but looking towards the future. The promise of a new era. The new pavilion gleamed under the morning sun. Guests began to arrive early. Hospital authorities, investors, medical staff. It's beautiful, Elena murmured, holding Leo as she looked at the facade that combined the ancient wall with modern glass. Does everything work as you expected? Matthew asked, approaching. Better. The new incubators are perfect, and the parents' area, it was your idea, but you improved it. Leo extended his tiny hands towards Matthew, who hesitated for a moment before smiling at him. You can hold him, Elena said. He doesn't bite yet. Matthew carefully took the baby. Leo immediately grabbed his tie. He's strong, he commented. Like his mother, Michelle said, joining them. It's time for the speech, Matthew. He returned the baby to Elena and walked towards the podium. The crowd quieted. This building, he began, is not just concrete and glass. It's a promise to every baby born here, to every family waiting in these hallways, to every life that begins within these walls. He paused, looking at the ancient wall. My father taught me that we build more than buildings. We build spaces where life happens, where families are formed, where love grows, sometimes in ways we don't expect. His eyes met Elena's for a moment. This pavilion is a bridge between the past and the future, like the wall we preserved. It reminds us that some things must remain, while others evolve and transform into something new, something better. Leo let out a giggle, breaking the solemnity of the moment. Some people laughed, and that, Matthew concluded with a smile, is the true sound of hope, the sound for which we build, the sound of the future. Applause resonated as he cut the ribbon. Elena approached with Leo. It was a good speech, she said. I learned from the best, he replied, looking at his parents in the crowd. You know, Leo will need godparents for his baptism. Matthew looked at her in surprise. Think about it, Elena added, before walking away to greet guests who wanted to meet Leo. Matthew remained looking at them, thinking about how sometimes life builds bridges where there were once walls. This is such a profoundly moving story about finding family in unexpected places and healing old wounds. If you were touched by Matthew and Elena's journey, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a dose of hope. And for more incredible tales of transformation, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell.
Ravenwood Hall stood hidden deep within a quiet countryside, surrounded by sprawling fields and dense groves of ancient trees. The grand estate, with its timeless architecture, seemed like a relic from another world, untouched by the hustle of modern life. Sophia Bennett gripped the steering wheel of her compact car, her eyes fixed on the gravel driveway leading to the imposing mansion. As a rising star in physical therapy, she was no stranger to challenging cases, yet this assignment filled her with a mix of apprehension and determination. "Focus, Sophia. It's just another job," she murmured to herself, her fingers tightening slightly on the wheel. Her patient, Lucas Sinclair, was once a legend in Formula One racing. He had basked in the glory of fame and victory until a devastating accident abruptly ended his career, leaving him confined to a wheelchair and shrouded in solitude. Ravenwood Hall loomed into view, its towering structure casting long shadows in the fading sunlight. The weathered stone walls radiated a sense of mystery and isolation. Sophia parked near the grand entrance, taking a deep breath as she prepared to face what might be the greatest challenge of her career. Sophia climbed the stone steps leading to the grand entrance of Ravenwood Hall. Before she could raise her hand to knock on the intricately carved wooden doors, they swung open, revealing an older woman with a stern expression. "You must be Miss Bennett," the woman said, her tone formal yet cool. "Yes, I'm Sophia Bennett," she replied, maintaining a professional smile. "Perfect. I'm Margaret Hensley, the housekeeper at Ravenwood. Mr. Sinclair values punctuality, so I trust you will always be as timely as you are today." Margaret led Sophia through expansive hallways lit by soft, golden light. The mansion was stately but devoid of warmth. No family photos adorned the walls, and no personal touches softened the cold elegance of the decor. "He's in the library," Margaret said, stopping before a set of grand double doors. "I should warn you, Mr. Sinclair is in a particularly difficult mood today." Sophia nodded, steadying her breath as Margaret pushed the doors open. The library was vast, its towering bookshelves bathed in the morning sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. There, silhouetted against the light, sat Lucas Sinclair in his wheelchair, his piercing blue eyes fixed on her. "Another one," he said, his voice cutting and laced with sarcasm. "How long did they say you'd last? A week or 3 days before you give up and leave?" Sophia held her ground, stepping further into the room. "I'm here because of your schedule and your insurance, Mr. Sinclair. Whether or not your life is worth living is entirely your concern. My job is to ensure your body doesn't deteriorate while you decide." Lucas blinked, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before he quickly masked it with indifference. Margaret cleared her throat softly. "I'll leave you two to it." The doors closed behind her, leaving Sophia and Lucas alone in the charged silence. "Shall we begin?" Sophia asked, keeping her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "You can try," Lucas replied, his gaze locked on her, as if testing the resolve of this young therapist. The first few days at Ravenwood Hall were a true test of Sophia's patience. Lucas Sinclair didn't just refuse to cooperate, he actively made her job more difficult. "Do you honestly believe a few simple exercises are going to change anything?" he asked, his tone as biting as ever. "I used to be the fastest man in the world, and now I can't even stand." Sophia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "That's true, Mr. Sinclair. You can't stand, but that doesn't mean your body has to get weaker." Her persistence and professionalism annoyed Lucas, yet he couldn't entirely dismiss her. After a few sessions, Sophia began to notice subtle changes in his demeanor. One morning, as she assessed his range of motion, she caught him looking at her differently. The sarcasm in his gaze was still there, but beneath it was something softer, something almost vulnerable. "Do you experience phantom pain often?" Sophia asked, her tone deliberately gentle. Lucas stared at her for a long moment before replying, his voice quieter than usual. "All the time, especially at night. It's like I'm still trapped in that burning car." His words stopped her in her tracks. For the first time, he'd revealed a piece of the deep pain he worked so hard to hide. "I can't fully understand what that feels like," she said, meeting his eyes, "but I can help you through it." Lucas let out a harsh, humorless laugh. "You're awfully confident, Miss Bennett." Sophia didn't reply. She simply continued taking notes, focusing on her work. But inside, she knew something between them was shifting. In the days that followed, Lucas became less resistant. Each time Sophia gave him instructions, he followed them, begrudgingly, but without the usual arguments. And though he never said it aloud, she could see the trust growing in his eyes. One afternoon, as the golden hues of sunset filtered through the library windows, Lucas broke the silence. "You make me remember who I was before the accident." Sophia offered him a small, encouraging smile. "Then let me help you find that person again." Sophia didn't expect their therapy session to be interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Margaret stepped in, her expression unusually tense. "Mr. Sinclair, there are 2 visitors here to see you," Margaret announced. "They say it's urgent." Lucas frowned, clearly displeased. "I'm not seeing anyone." "It's Andrew Coleman and Richard Hale," Margaret added. Sophia immediately recognized the names. Andrew had been Lucas's manager and Richard was the owner of his former racing team. Lucas hesitated for a moment before nodding reluctantly. "Fine, let them in." The library doors opened and 2 men entered, their tension palpable. "Lucas," Andrew began, his voice carefully measured, "we have important news." Richard placed a USB drive on the desk. "We found evidence about your accident." Lucas froze, his icy gaze fixed on them. "The accident was my fault. I pushed the car too hard and ignored the crew's warnings." "It wasn't," Richard countered firmly. "The security cameras in the maintenance bay recorded footage. Someone tampered with your car's steering system. This wasn't mechanical failure, it was sabotage." Sophia held her breath, watching Lucas. Anger and pain warred in his expression. "Who did it?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "We don't have definitive proof yet," Andrew replied. "But the evidence points to Vail Racing, the team that wanted to buy out your team after the crash tanked its value." Lucas turned away, gripping the arms of his wheelchair tightly. "I've blamed myself for so long, and now you're telling me it was all a lie?" Sophia stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Lucas," she said softly, kneeling beside him and placing her hand gently on his shoulder. "This wasn't your fault, but now you have the chance to take back control, to stand up not just for yourself, but for everyone who believed in you." He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. "I need time to process this." Andrew and Richard nodded, leaving the library and the heavy silence that lingered in their wake. Lucas looked up at Sophia, his eyes filled with turmoil. "What do you think I should do, Sophia?" Her voice was steady and resolute. "Face the truth, Lucas. Not just to free yourself, but to stand up for the people who stood by you." Lucas stared at her for a long moment before nodding, a newfound determination flickering in his eyes. After the visitors left, Sophia noticed Lucas was quieter than usual. That evening, she decided to stay at the mansion to ensure he didn't spiral further into his pain. Margaret guided her to the conservatory, a space filled with the sweet scent of jasmine and the soft glow of hanging lights above. Lucas was seated among the rows of flowers, his gaze distant as he stared through the large glass panes. Sophia approached him cautiously, sensing the weight of the silence surrounding him. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Lucas didn't turn, his voice low and heavy with emotion. "I've built my entire life around guilt. I don't know who I am without it." Sophia sat down on the bench beside him, the distance between them no longer feeling significant. "You're a survivor, Lucas. You've endured everything and made it this far. You're stronger than you think." He turned to her, his piercing blue eyes searching hers. "Why do you care so much about me?" Sophia took a deep breath, feeling her heart race. "Because I see someone worth saving, someone who doesn't just need help, but deserves it." Lucas closed his eyes, a faint, bitter smile playing on his lips. "You're stubborn, Sophia." "Maybe," she replied with a gentle laugh, "but I'm not leaving." In that moment, the walls between them seemed to crumble. Lucas reached out, hesitating before his hand gently rested against her cheek. "You make me want to feel again, to live again." Sophia felt the warmth of his touch, but her rational mind reminded her it wasn't the right time. She stood, breaking the tension with a soft smile. "I'll help you feel again, Lucas. But first, we need to finish your therapy." Lucas chuckled, this time without sarcasm, but with genuine warmth. "Then, where do we start?" The day of the hearing dawned, and Ravenwood Hall was quieter than usual. Sophia stood by the window, watching Lucas carefully adjust his tie in front of the mirror. Today, he wasn't in his familiar wheelchair. Instead, he leaned on a sleek, modern carbon cane, a testament to his determination over the past week. "Are you ready?" Sophia asked, her voice soft but encouraging. Lucas turned to her, a mixture of resolve and apprehension in his eyes. "I don't know, but with you by my side, I think I can face anything." Together, they stepped into the car. Lucas gripped his cane tightly, standing tall. During the drive to the racing board headquarters, Sophia placed her hand over his, silently offering strength. When they arrived, the flashes of cameras lit up the entrance. Reporters shouted questions over one another. "Mr. Sinclair, was your accident sabotage?" "Miss Bennett, are you still his therapist?" Lucas remained composed, giving only a polite nod to the chaos. Inside the hearing room, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The board sat elevated above the rest, while representatives from Vail Racing stood to the side, their expressions guarded. The hearing stretched on for hours. Evidence from security footage, maintenance records, and financial transactions was meticulously presented. Sophia watched as Lucas stood, leaning on his cane for support, and addressed the board. 10 months ago, I believed the accident was my fault. I blamed myself, tore myself apart with guilt. But today, I stand here, not to reclaim my reputation, but to protect the people who work tirelessly for our team, people who don't deserve to bear the consequences of this conspiracy. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone present. When the hearing concluded, Lucas walked out with Sophia at his side, his face lighter than she'd ever seen it. Reporters swarmed once more, but this time, he didn't avoid them. "What are your plans now, Mr. Sinclair?" one journalist called out. Lucas paused, smiling, and answered calmly, "To keep healing. Not just for myself, but for others. And," he turned to Sophia, taking her hand, "to love this extraordinary woman who reminded me that sometimes crashes lead us exactly where we're meant to be." The sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in warm hues as Sophia and Lucas stepped into the garden at Ravenwood Hall. This was the spot where Lucas once told her his mother believed any problem could be solved while sitting among blooming roses. "There's something I want to give you," Lucas said, settling onto the stone bench near the rose bushes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, the item inside wasn't a ring. Sophia looked at the carefully polished, antique key resting inside. "What is this?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "The key to the conservatory," Lucas explained. "I've had it restored, to make it our space. It's where we had our first dance, where we spoke the truth about how we feel. I want it to be a place for our dreams and our new beginning." Sophia smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" Lucas looked at her with hopeful eyes. "I'm asking you to build a life with me." Sophia stood, taking his hand and pulling him to his feet. "Then dance with me," she whispered. Lucas set his cane aside and wrapped his arms around her. They moved slowly among the roses, bathed in the gentle light of the moon. "I've dreamed of this," Lucas murmured against her ear. "Holding you without barriers, loving you without fear." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes shimmering in the soft glow. "And I've dreamed of finding someone who makes me feel like I belong. That someone is you." They continued to dance in silence, their breaths and heartbeats perfectly in sync. "What'll we do next?" Sophia asked softly. Lucas smiled, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Build new dreams and do it together." That night, surrounded by the scent of jasmine and the glow of moonlight, they began a new chapter, not with unfinished dreams, but with a shared belief in a future filled with hope. A few months later, on a magical evening, the conservatory glowed under a canopy of golden fairy lights. Lucas had transformed the space into a garden of dreams. Vibrant blooms of roses, lilies, and jasmine lined every corner, their scents mingling in the air. The floor was a carpet of soft petals, leading to the center where a small table held candles flickering softly. casting shadows that danced across the glass walls. Lucas, now able to take small, careful steps, stood waiting for her in the heart of it all. When Sophia entered, she gasped at the breathtaking scene. "Lucas, what is all of this?" He walked toward her slowly, his gaze locked on hers. When he reached her, he steadied himself and knelt on one knee, pulling out a small box from his pocket. "Sophia Bennett," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you didn't just heal my body, Sophia. You brought light back into my life when all I saw was darkness. You believed in me when I had given up on myself. You made me dream again. Will you take this journey with me, not just as my partner, but as my heart and my hope for the rest of our lives?" Sophia covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Lucas, yes, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger, and as he stood, they embraced amidst the flowers. Their wedding took place in the conservatory, the very place where all their dreams had begun. The space overflowed with fresh flowers, roses, jasmine, and wildflowers that Sophia loved. Lucas, in a sharp suit, walked confidently without his cane or wheelchair, making his way toward Sophia, his bride, radiant in her white gown that outshone even the flowers around her. They exchanged vows surrounded by the joyful smiles of friends and family. As Lucas kissed Sophia, petals rained down, blessing their union and the bright future ahead. Their story didn't end in sorrow or regret, but in hope, love, and a reminder that miracles aren't always grand gestures. They often come from love, persistence, and the faith we place in each other. Sophia Carter sat upright at her desk in the executive office of Lancaster Holdings, her hand unconsciously resting on her stomach beneath the loose blazer. She had kept this secret for 8 months and 3 weeks, and if everything went according to plan, she would leave in just a few weeks, without anyone ever knowing. But every plan had flaws. The sound of Italian leather shoes tapping against marble signaled the arrival of Damien Lancaster. His sharp gray eyes scanned the office before settling on her. "You look different today." Sophia's heart clenched, but her voice remained steady. "New blazer." Damien narrowed his eyes slightly, but said nothing more. He continued into his office, but Sophia knew he had noticed something. She took a slow breath, forcing her focus back on the screen. But the moment her fingers touched the keyboard, a sudden pain clenched deep in her abdomen. Sophia bit down on her lip, waiting for it to pass. No, it was too soon. She still had 3 weeks. Everything had to go according to plan. Through the glass door, she watched Damien stride across the room, exuding control. Sophia closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "It's fine, I have this under control." She had no idea this secret, this carefully built lie, was seconds away from unraveling. Sophia had once believed she would never make a mistake like this. But that night in Chicago, she let emotions win over reason. A raging storm had delayed their flight indefinitely. While waiting, she and Damien sat at the hotel bar, both exhausted after a long day of negotiations. "One drink won't make you lose control, Sophia," Damien had said, his sharp eyes softer than usual. One drink, then another. Their conversation shifted from work to something more personal. The sacrifices made for success, the lonely nights in the office, and then in the dimly lit bar filled with the haze of whiskey and unspoken words, the line between them blurred. The first kiss in the elevator, his breath warm against her skin as the hotel room door clicked shut, the whispered words, the burning touch of his fingers against her body. By morning, the storm had cleared. Damien had simply buttoned his crisp shirt, his face unreadable, his touch absent, like the night had never happened. No promises, no lingering looks. Just her, left alone with the consequence. Sophia tried to push the memories aside and focus on work, but the pain from this morning hadn't faded. It had only gotten worse. After work, she went to her best friend Elena Brooks' apartment. The moment Elena saw her, she frowned. "You don't look okay, Sophia. You're pale." "I'm just tired," she lied. But the moment she sat down, a sharp pain clinched her lower abdomen, making her grip the armrest. "That's not exhaustion, that's labor," Elena shouted. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" Panic surged through Sophia. If she went to the hospital, Damien would find out. Elena clenched her jaw. "Then at least let me call an Uber." The car weaved through New York's evening traffic as Sophia tried to convince herself these were just Braxton Hicks contractions. But when her water suddenly broke, reality hit her like a freight train. She was in labor. Before she could catch her breath, a car in front of them swerved sharply. Screeching tires, the deafening crunch of metal against metal, the violent jolt sent Sophia's world spinning. The impact hurled Sophia forward. A sharp pain tore through her stomach. Her phone slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor. "Sophia!" Elena screamed, but her voice sounded distant. When the world stopped spinning, all Sophia could feel was the warm wetness between her legs and the searing pain spreading through her body. The baby wasn't waiting anymore. A paramedic yanked the door open, his voice urgent over the radio. "Female, approximately 34 weeks pregnant, motor vehicle accident, active labor. We need immediate transport to the hospital." Elena grabbed Sophia's phone from the floor, the screen cracked but still glowing. The emergency contact flashed across the screen. Damien Lancaster. Damien Lancaster sat in the executive boardroom of Lancaster Holdings, reviewing a multi-million-dollar contract. Everything was going according to plan, just as he always ensured it did. Then his phone rang. He almost ignored it, but when he saw the caller ID, a chill ran down his spine. "Mount Sinai Hospital," he answered, his voice steady as always. "Damien Lancaster." Mr. Lancaster, this is Dr. Regina Chen from Mount Sinai's emergency department. We're calling regarding Sophia Carter. She's been in an accident and is currently in labor. Time froze. In labor? His voice dropped to a lethal calm. She's approximately 34 weeks pregnant. We need you to come immediately. The blood in his veins turned to ice. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Sophia leaving early, the loose blazers, the way she had avoided his gaze. She had been hiding this from him for months. And now the truth came crashing down like a tidal wave, drowning every ounce of control he thought he had. All rational thought disappeared as he shot to his feet, grabbing his coat. "Don't let her leave," he ordered before hanging up. No one dared to stop him as he strode through the office, his presence cutting through the air like a blade. As he sped through Manhattan's traffic, only one question repeated in his mind. Why did she think he didn't deserve to know? When Damien stepped through the hospital doors, the world around him blurred into insignificance. Sophia was pregnant. She had been carrying his child for 8 months and had never said a word. A nurse led him to the emergency room. The doors swung open and he saw her, lying on the hospital bed, pale from pain, hair damp with sweat. But still, Sophia. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Maybe she had hoped he wouldn't come. "Damien?" Her voice was hoarse, breathless. "I was going to tell you." A violent contraction cut off her words. Damien's fists clenched. Anger, betrayal, confusion, all of it swirled inside him, but right now only one thing mattered. He stepped to her bedside, took her trembling hand in his. "We will talk about this, but not now." His voice was steady, unwavering. "Right now, you need to focus on delivering our child." She stared up at him, uncertainty clouding her expression. But then another contraction hit, and she gripped his hand so tightly that her nails dug into his skin. "Doctor, the baby is crowning," a nurse called. "Sophia, you need to push," the doctor urged. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Damien's tone was firm, unwavering. He leaned down, gripping her hand tighter. "I've worked with you for years. I've never seen you back down. Don't start now." Sophia's breath hitched. Then she nodded. The next contraction came. She pushed with everything she had. A sharp, piercing cry filled the room. "Congratulations, it's a boy." Sophia broke into sobs. Damien stood frozen, watching as the nurse wrapped the tiny baby in a blanket. Someone handed him scissors. Would Dad like to cut the cord? For the first time in his life, Damien Lancaster had no idea what to do. But as he held the scissors, hovering over the umbilical cord, something shifted. This wasn't a business deal. This wasn't a calculated move. This was his son. But somehow, his hands remained steady as he severed the delicate connection between mother and child. And in that moment, he knew. Everything had changed forever. Damien didn't leave the hospital, even after the doctors assured him that both Sophia and the baby were fine. He stayed, sitting silently beside her bed, his sharp gray eyes never straying far from her or the newborn. Hours later, when Sophia finally woke, she found herself in the quiet recovery ward. Beside her, Damien was holding Lucas Lancaster in his arms. The sight made her throat tighten. "You're still here?" she whispered. Damien looked up, his face unreadable. He hadn't slept, yet he didn't seem tired. "Did you think I'd leave?" His voice was low, dangerous. Sophia gripped the blanket tighter. "You don't have to do this, Damien. You don't owe me anything." Damien was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, stepping closer to her bed. "Oh, you?" His brow lifted. "Sophia, do you really think I'd find out I have a son and just walk away?" She bit her lip, looking away. "You don't have to take responsibility. I can handle this on my own." Damien placed Lucas carefully in the bassinet beside her, then leaned in, hands braced on the edge of her bed. There were only inches between them now. "Is that what you think?" His voice had gone rough. "That I'm only here out of obligation?" Sophia's breath caught. "You're Damien Lancaster. You don't believe in marriage. You don't believe in family. I've heard you say it 100 times. Damien studied her for a long moment. Then let me prove you wrong, Sophia. Not with words, not with promises, but with actions. With us. 3 days later, the doctor cleared Sophia for discharge. Damien had arranged everything. A sleek black SUV waited outside. A nurse carefully secured Lucas in the car seat. Everything ran smoothly, efficiently, just as Damien Lancaster always ensured. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, a storm raging inside her. She knew she should feel grateful. Instead, all she felt was trapped. When they arrived at Damien's penthouse, the doors opened, and she froze. This place had always been minimalistic, cold, devoid of any signs of life beyond its luxurious furniture. But now, a crib stood neatly in the master bedroom. Baby formula, a changing table, a bottle warmer, all perfectly arranged. Sophia turned to Damien. "You did all this in 3 days?" He shrugged off his coat, voice calm. "I don't intend to be an absent father." But that only made her panic more. "Damien, I can't stay here." He stilled. "What?" She took a deep breath. "I had a plan. I was moving to Boston. I got a job offer there." "Liam Whitmore." Damien's voice was no longer sharp. It was lethal, dripping with controlled fury. "You were planning to take my son away?" Sophia clenched her hands. "I wasn't taking him from you. Just what, Sophia?" He stepped closer, his gaze burning into her. "You think I'm just doing my duty? You think I'd let you walk away without a fight?" Her throat tightened. "I can't stay here just because you feel obligated." Damien stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you." She hadn't expected that. "But don't think for a second that I won't fight to keep my son in my life." Her heart pounded. She had been prepared to leave. So why did it feel like she was the one being left behind? The next morning, Sophia woke with a heavy sense of unease. She was no longer in the hospital, but the air in Damien's penthouse felt more suffocating than any sterile white walls. She quietly stepped into the living room, only to find Damien already awake, standing by the window, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. Before she could ask what was wrong, her own phone buzzed nonstop. The moment she unlocked it, her blood ran cold. Front page headline: CEO Damien Lancaster's secret baby with former assistant, hidden for 8 months. Paparazzi photos of her at the hospital, of Damien, his face unreadable as he walked through the ER doors. Her breath hitched. A cold dread settled in her chest. She looked up at Damien, her voice barely above a whisper. "How?" "Whitmore." Damien's jaw tightened. "He was at the office yesterday. He must have overheard something, and now the entire world knows." Sophia gripped her phone. "This could destroy your reputation," she whispered. "I don't care," Damien cut her off, "but I won't let them drag you through the mud." Another message popped up on her phone. An email from the board of directors. "We need to face this," Damien said. "Right now." 20 minutes later, they entered the main conference room of Lancaster Holdings, where the board was waiting. But that wasn't the only thing that made Sophia's stomach twist. The press was there too. A reporter stood the moment they walked in. "Mr. Lancaster, rumors say Ms. Carter was promoted because she's the mother of your child. Care to comment?" Damien didn't hesitate. "Ms. Carter was promoted because she's one of the most capable employees at Lancaster Holdings. That is the only reason." "And your personal relationship with her?" Sophia took a deep breath. This moment would change everything. Sophia could feel the camera flashes exploding around her, the scrutinizing gazes of the board members drilling into her. She glanced at Damien. He was calm, composed, but his hand resting on the table was clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Another reporter spoke up. "Mr. Lancaster, what about the child? Do you intend to publicly acknowledge your role?" Damien straightened, his voice steady and firm. "Lucas Lancaster is my son. I have nothing to hide." Silence fell over the room. Sophia swallowed hard. This was it. If she didn't speak now, the rumors would spiral out of control. She clenched her hands, then stepped forward. I hid this because I was afraid, she said, her voice clear despite her pounding heart. Not because I wanted to manipulate anyone, but because I didn't know how to face it. A moment of silence. Then, a reporter asked, "Afraid of what, Miss Carter?" She took a deep breath and turned to Damien. Afraid he wouldn't want a family, afraid that if I told him he would see it as a burden rather than something precious. Damien stared at her. Then, in front of the entire press and boardroom, he reached for the microphone. "The only thing I regret," he said slowly, "is that she didn't tell me sooner." The entire room seemed to freeze. And if anyone in this room believes I'd let the woman I love and the mother of my child walk away, then you've grossly underestimated who I am. A murmur swept through the audience, but Sophia could only look at Damien. He wasn't looking away. He was here. For her. For Lucas. 6 months later, autumn rain drizzled over New York. Inside Damien's penthouse, the golden glow of the lights cast a warm contrast to the storm that had changed everything half a year ago. Sophia stood by the window, cradling Lucas in her arms. He had grown so much, soft brown hair curling at his forehead, gray eyes mirroring the man who had claimed him as his own. "What are you thinking about?" Damien's voice came from behind her. Sophia smiled softly. "Chicago. That storm." Damien stepped closer, wrapping an arm around both her and their son. "Oh?" She nodded. "Back then, I thought it was just a fleeting moment. A mistake." Damien leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And now?" Sophia turned to face him, no longer afraid, no longer uncertain. "Now," she whispered, "I think it was the beginning of us." Damien smiled, one of those rare, unguarded smiles that only she and Lucas ever saw. "I think so too." Outside, the rain continued to fall, but this time, it didn't signal the end of something. It marked a new beginning. A real family born not from perfection, but from love, struggle, and the choice to stay. The weight of her backpack felt heavier with every step as Anna hurried down the sidewalk, exhaustion settling into her bones after 3 back-to-back classes and an 8-hour shift at the coffee shop. The biting November air cut through her thin jacket, a sharp reminder that winter was approaching, and she still couldn't afford a proper coat. When the No 42 bus pulled up, Anna let out a quiet sigh of relief. She climbed aboard, flashing her monthly pass at the driver, a grumpy middle-aged man with perpetually furrowed brows, before slumping into a window seat. Resting her forehead against the cool glass, she watched the city lights blur together, her eyelids growing heavy. "Wait!" A male voice rang out just as the doors began to close. The driver scowled but begrudgingly reopened them. A young man in his early 20s jogged aboard, slightly out of breath. He wore a plain gray sweater that somehow looked expensive, his dark brown hair tousled by the wind. There was something about his confident posture that made a few passengers glance up. "There'll be $3.50, the driver announced flatly. The young man patted his pockets, his expression shifting from confusion to growing panic. I think I left my wallet at home." His voice faltered, embarrassment flickering across his features. "No money, no ride," the driver said, already gesturing toward the door. "I've got a schedule to keep." Anna observed the exchange, recognizing the unmistakable look of humiliation. She knew that feeling all too well. Without overthinking it, she stood up, walked forward, and reached into her pocket for the loose change she'd received as tips earlier. "Here," she said, extending $3.25. "I've got it." The young man turned to her, surprise evident in his amber eyes. For a moment he seemed about to refuse, but then he nodded, gratitude softening his face. "Thank you. I'll pay you back." "Don't worry about it," Anna offered a tired smile before returning to her seat. The young man took a seat a few rows ahead, glancing back at her occasionally. But Anna hardly noticed, lost in thoughts of tomorrow's exam and whether her mother had remembered to take her medication. What she didn't know was that she had just helped Tom Whitaker, heir to the Whitaker Grand Hotel empire, with luxury properties spanning 3 continents. The same Tom whose face sometimes appeared in business magazines beside headlines about the future of the hospitality industry. As the bus rumbled through the city streets, 2 worlds briefly intersected, neither realizing that this small moment would change everything. The espresso machine whirred as Anna worked behind the counter, her hands moving with the effortless precision of someone who had spent 2 years perfecting the art of making coffee. Even on the most exhausting days, she could steam milk and pour perfect latte art without a second thought. "Grande caramel latte with almond milk," Anna called, sliding the cup across the counter without looking up. "Thanks," a familiar voice replied. Anna glanced up instinctively and froze. Standing before her, wearing the same confident expression, was the guy from the bus. "It's you?" she blurted out. He shrugged, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Told you I'd pay you back." "You didn't have to come all this way just for $3.50, Anna said, still caught off guard. "Maybe I just wanted good coffee too," Tom replied, a hint of something playful in his voice. "I'm Tom, by the way." "Anna," she responded automatically, but before she could say more, Lisa, her co-worker, nudged her urgently. "We've got 6 people waiting on drinks, Anna." "Right, sorry." She turned back to her work, but she could still feel Tom's gaze on her as he stepped away from the counter. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him take a seat by the window, pulling out a book instead of his phone, an oddly refreshing detail. Throughout her shift, their eyes met occasionally, brief glances quickly averted. When the rush finally died down, Anna grabbed a rag and approached his table. "So," she said, smirking, "do you make a habit of forgetting your wallet?" Tom chuckled, closing his book. "Not usually. Yesterday was unusual." "How so?" Anna teased. Tom hesitated slightly before answering. "Let's just say I'm trying something new." Anna raised an eyebrow. "Mysterious?" "Not intentionally," he admitted, his expression turning more serious. "Honestly, I came back for another reason. Yesterday, you were the first person who did something nice for me without expecting anything in return." "It was just bus fare," Anna said, a little thrown by his intensity. "Still," Tom said earnestly, "I'd like to thank you properly. Maybe with coffee, sometime, when you're not working." Anna studied him carefully. There was something about him she couldn't quite figure out, something he wasn't saying, but his eyes seemed genuine. "I don't even know you," she pointed out. "That's the point of coffee, isn't it? To get to know someone," Tom grinned. Before she could answer, her manager's voice called from behind the counter. "Anna, your break's over." She hesitated, then glanced back at Tom. "I'm here most mornings," he said quickly. "Think about it." Anna nodded slightly before returning to work. For the rest of her shift, she found herself glancing at the spot where he had been sitting, but the next time she looked, the seat was empty. And strangely, she found herself feeling disappointed. Mornings at Brew & Bean had become part of Tom's routine. Every day, without fail, he showed up, ordered a black coffee, and settled into his usual seat by the window. At first, Anna told herself it was just a coincidence. But as the days passed and he kept returning, she couldn't deny the truth. She had started to look forward to those fleeting glances and the short conversations they shared when the shop wasn't too busy. "You really like the coffee here that much?" Anna teased one morning as she wiped down the table near him. Tom smirked, stirring his coffee lazily. "Maybe I just like the place for a different reason." Anna rolled her eyes, but the smile tugging at her lips gave her away. After a few weeks, their interactions extended beyond the coffee shop. At first, it was accidental. Bumping into each other at a bookstore, spotting each other at a small diner near Anna's university. But then, the meetings were no longer coincidences. One evening, after Anna's shift ended, Tom was waiting outside. "Want to take a walk?" he asked. She hesitated for just a second before nodding. They strolled through the city streets, the glow of streetlights casting soft golden hues around them. They talked about everything: music, art, places they dreamed of visiting. Anna shared her love for Renaissance paintings, her dream of working in a museum someday. Tom listened, his eyes fixed on her, taking in every word. But when she turned the questions on him, his family, his past, why he left his job, his answers remained vague. "I used to work in business," he said simply, "but it wasn't the kind of life I wanted." Anna sensed he was holding something back, but she didn't press. What she didn't know was that, despite wanting to open up to her, Tom wasn't ready to let her see the full truth just yet. It was late afternoon, and Brew & Bean was busier than usual. Anna moved quickly behind the counter, calling out orders, barely pausing to catch her breath. The rush was so intense that she hardly noticed when Tom walked in. "Cappuccino, please." She glanced up instinctively, a small smile forming before she even realized it. "You again?" Tom shrugged, dropping a $5 bill into the tip jar. "Told you, I like this place." Before they could say more, the door chimed and a middle-aged man in a tailored suit stepped inside. Anna barely registered his presence, but she noticed the way Tom tensed the moment their eyes met. "Tom?" The man squinted, his tone laced with surprise and amusement. "No way." Tom turned away slightly, as if hoping to go unnoticed. "Too late. Didn't expect to find you in a place like this," the man continued, smirking. "Let me guess. You're experiencing life among the common folk?" Anna frowned, glancing between Tom and the stranger. But before she could ask, another voice cut through the air. Tom Whitaker. A journalist, her press badge swinging from her neck, stood near the counter, phone raised, camera ready. The heir to Whitaker Grand Hotels, slumming it in a local coffee shop. Is this part of some elaborate PR stunt? The room seemed to tilt. Tom Whitaker? As in Whitaker Grand Hotels? The luxury chain with billboards all over the city? Anna turned to Tom, but he said nothing. His silence told her everything. "Anna," Tom started, stepping toward her. She took a step back. "Who are you?" "I was going to tell you," he said quietly, desperation creeping into his voice. "I just needed the right moment." "The right moment?" Anna let out a bitter laugh. "You had weeks, and now I find out from a reporter instead of from you?" The murmurs around the cafe grew louder. Lisa, standing nearby, crossed her arms. "Knew something was off," she muttered. Anna inhaled sharply, trying to keep her emotions in check. She felt exposed, humiliated. Every conversation they'd had, every time he listened to her talk about struggling to pay rent, about her mother's medical bills. Tom had known. He had always known. "You lied to me from the start," she whispered. "No, I never—" "Don't," she cut him off. "I can't do this." She pulled off her apron, feeling suffocated, and turned toward the exit. Tom could only stand there, watching as she disappeared through the door. And in that moment, he knew. He had lost her. Tom stood frozen outside Brew and Bean, watching as Anna disappeared into the bustling city crowd. He wanted to chase after her, to explain, to make her stay. But how could he, when he had already shattered the trust between them? For the first time in his life, words weren't enough. 2 days later, in the massive penthouse apartment his family owned, Tom stood before his father, Richard Whitaker, the man who had dictated his future since the day he was born. "You've caused enough of a mess," Richard said, his tone cool, calculated. "The media is circling like vultures. It's time to stop pretending and step back into the life you were meant for." Tom met his father's gaze, steady and unflinching. "I'm not coming back." Richard scoffed. "And what do you plan to do? Walk away from an empire? All for some barista?" "No," Tom said firmly. "I'm leaving because I refuse to live a life that isn't mine." 3 days later, Tom left the city with nothing but a small backpack and what little savings he had. He didn't know exactly where he was going, only that he needed to figure out who he was without the weight of the Whitaker name. What he didn't know was that, even from a distance, Anna was still watching. 3 weeks had passed since everything fell apart. Anna threw herself into work and school, but no matter how busy she kept herself, she couldn't erase Tom from her thoughts. The question nagged at her. If he was just a liar, why would he walk away from everything? She avoided reading about Whitaker Grand Hotels, but every time she accidentally came across a headline about the missing heir, her heart clenched. One evening, as she set the table for dinner in their tiny apartment, her mother, Margaret, spoke up. "You're still thinking about him." Anna sighed, setting down the plates. "I don't know." "Then why do you still check the news for updates on him?" Anna stayed silent. Her mother studied her for a long moment before saying gently, "If you really want to close this chapter, you need to hear the truth for yourself." Anna tossed and turned, but sleep refused to come. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions. Anger, confusion, something dangerously close to hope. She reached for her laptop, hesitating before typing his name. Did she really want to open this door again? And yet, before she could stop herself, her fingers moved on their own, searching for any trace of where he had gone. She typed Tom Whitaker into the search bar. Not to find articles about his family, but to track down where he had gone. At Pinewood Lodge, a small secluded inn in the mountains, far from the glass towers of the city. And for the first time in weeks, Anna knew exactly what she needed to do. The winding road leading to Pinewood Lodge snaked through misty mountain ridges. As the bus came to a stop at a gravel-lined path, Anna pulled her coat tighter around her. In the distance, the lodge came into view, a rustic wooden building, a stark contrast to the sleek luxury of Whitaker hotels. She took a steadying breath before stepping inside. Behind the front desk, an older man with a graying beard looked up. "Looking for a room?" Anna shook her head. "I'm looking for someone. Tom Whitaker. He works here." The man's brows lifted slightly before he nodded. "He's cleaning rooms. I'll get him." Before Anna could fully brace herself, a door behind the desk swung open. Tom walked out, carrying a stack of towels. Their eyes met. Tom froze, nearly dropping the towels. Anna held her breath, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she expected. An apologetic look, a hesitant smile, but all she saw was pure shock in his amber gaze. "Anna?" His voice was rough, disbelieving. She swallowed. "Hey, Tom." The lodge manager quietly excused himself, leaving them alone in the hushed space. "What are you doing here?" Tom finally asked. "I don't know," Anna admitted. "I just needed to hear the truth from you." Tom exhaled, setting the towels down. "I should have told you from the beginning." Anna crossed her arms, studying him. "Then tell me now." Tom took a deep breath. "I didn't want you to see me as a Whitaker. I grew up in a world where people only cared about money and power. When I left, I wanted to figure out who I was without all of that. And then I met you." Anna held his gaze. "And you thought lying was the best way?" "No," Tom said quietly. "I was wrong. But with you, for the first time, I wasn't an heir. I was just a guy on a bus, someone who liked coffee, someone who loved listening to you talk about art." A cold wind drifted in through an open window, but Anna didn't feel the chill. "Have you changed?" she asked. Tom looked straight into her eyes. "I don't know if it's enough, but I know I'm never going back to the life I left behind." The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It was just two people, once lost to each other, standing in a quiet mountain lodge, trying to find something worth holding on to again. Mornings in the mountains were far quieter than the city. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the pines, casting a golden glow over the still waters of the lake outside Pinewood Lodge. Anna sat on a wooden bench, cradling a cup of hot coffee between her hands. Beside her, Tom sat in silence, watching the gentle ripples across the surface. "Are you planning to stay here forever?" she asked, breaking the quiet. Tom took a deep breath, as if weighing his answer. "I don't know. It's peaceful here, but it's not everything I want." Anna nodded. She understood. In some ways, Tom had found himself here, but that didn't mean he was meant to stay. Setting her cup down, she turned to him. "So, what are you going to do next?" Tom met her gaze, a slow smile forming. "I think it's time to go back to the real world, but on my own terms." A few months later, Tom returned to the city, not to reclaim Whitaker Grand Hotels, but to build something of his own, a consulting firm that helped small, independent hotels compete against corporate giants. Instead of using his expertise to grow his family's wealth, he used it to help those trying to succeed on their own terms. Anna, too, followed her own path. She graduated and landed her dream job at a renowned art museum. But most importantly, they remained together. They took their time. No secrets, no masks. Just two people who had chosen each other, day by day, step by step. One evening, at the first exhibition Anna curated, Tom arrived just as she was feeling the weight of nervous anticipation. "I figured you could use some encouragement," he said, handing her a small wrapped box. Anna opened it. Inside was an antique silver bookmark engraved with Renaissance patterns. "You always talk about forgotten female artists," Tom explained. "I found this at an old bookshop. It reminded me of you." Anna smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. Some love stories weren't about fate. They weren't about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. Sometimes love was simply about a choice, choosing each other every single day, despite everything.